So I have a question for you. Have you ever given? This one is for the people pleasers, the overgivers, the big-hearted empaths. This one, I think you're really going to understand. Have you ever supported someone or defended them, or maybe you've helped them financially, or you're always there for them emotionally, but then it's that very same person that criticizes you, or you start to feel that maybe they envy you, or even worse, they reject or abandon you? If this has ever happened to you, you're not alone and you're not naive. I think a lot of times when we invest in someone and we care about them, we do it because we love them. But today we're going to talk about the deeper meaning from a psychology lens and the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who really talks about this concept, and he shared it over a century ago. So today we have timeless wisdom that can help us in our current modern world. And today's topic is really all about, why do the people you care and help often be the ones who betray you and hurt you the most? This message today is inspired by the YouTube channel Ancient Philosophy. This is a great YouTube channel, and this is excerpted and inspired by their message of why do people you help often end up betraying you. Stick around. Welcome to She Saves Herself, a podcast for emotional abuse survivors who have had enough. Enough gaslighting, manipulation, control, and self-abandonment. Here, we no longer shrink just to survive. Hello. Welcome to the She Saves Herself podcast. I'm Shannon Kaiser, the author of The Self-Love Experiment and the author of Return to You and Adventures for Your Soul and other books that are designed and created to help you feel better and happier, and most importantly, more aligned to your true self. Here at She Saves Herself, we are committed to helping you feel better from the inside out. And a lot of the ways that we do that is by personal growth and understanding maybe our blind spots and understanding maybe where childhood wounds might be affecting us currently, and ultimately so we can have stronger relationships with ourselves and others. So here we are, welcome back, and if you're here, then you probably relate. It's possible that you have given, showed up, been that awesome rock for someone you care about, and it blew up in your face. This happened to me not once, not twice, not three, not even a whole handful. In 2-year period, I had 9 intense betrayals back to back, and I finally said, okay, universe, what the heck? I got to figure out what's going on, because the connection between all of these people that I'm investing, caring about, loving with all my heart, and then they just straight up steal from me, abandon me, do smear campaigns behind my back, lie. Let's figure this out. And this is not a rant. This is not a, message on anything more than the psychology of why people betray us. And once I figured this out, oh my God, it changed everything. So let's dive right in. We're going to explore the psychology behind betrayal, but also gratitude. And you can't do that if you don't include ego, right? We're all humans and we all have egos. So let's really dive in. Think about in your own life if this has ever happened, where you were helping someone and then paradoxically, it completely destroyed the relationship. What is that about? Well, if you stay towards the end today, we have a shorter podcast, but I'm going to be sharing the exact steps that you can take to make sure this never happens in your life again. I have been instilling these steps and my life has transformed. My relationships are so healthy. I feel better from the inside out, and I am cultivating a much more balanced way of approaching getting to know new people. So let's dive into the very first thing that Nietzsche, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, really talks about. And he talks about this idea, as I said, over 100 years ago, but it still holds true today. The one who receives help, right? Let's put ourselves kind of in these positions. You can think about you as the giver, or if you've received from other people, what happens if you ever feel, start to feel kind of resentful towards them. There's a psychology and a psychological reason why. And, if you receive help, it can actually lead to someone hating their benefactor. Whew. Right? I have experienced that. I was like, I don't understand. I'm loving someone. I'm caring about them, but they hate me now. Well, here is why. When you help someone in a significant way with your time, money, energy, financially, or even emotionally, it's actually a shift in the invisible balance of power in relationships. And so you actually become the one who is giving to the person who needs. And if the person who needs, they will feel a deficit if they are operating more from their ego. If they are operating more from the space of, I need to protect myself and have pride, versus living fully in their heart space, or living or working towards living a more humble life or a more personal growth path available to them. So in the human mind, it's going to create tension in this invisible. That's the thing. This is a completely invisible thread that starts to make the person who needs someone, or the person who's actually giving to them, they actually start to feel humiliated. And it's all on them. It's all in their head. But if you're the giver and you keep giving, you won't realize there's a quiet resentment building up on both sides. Not only are you the giver, a lot of people pleasers just give and give, and even a nice thank you would be enough. If you don't get a thank you, you don't have that reciprocation. If you don't feel that they're really caring, they're just taking advantage, you will have a point where you build so much resentment too. Well, paradoxically, of course, the giver and the receiver both build resentment. Psychologically, it's just human nature. So helping someone is noble, right? It's great. And it can help other people when they receive, but unconsciously, it can signal to the person who is constantly on the receiving end of the giver that they weren't capable. This happens on a subconscious or deeper layer underneath. It's not something they always bring to the surface or can consciously conceptualize. But they basically will lead to, I'm dependent. I need this person. I'm codependent. That makes me inferior. And that is what Nietzsche says and said of the will to power. It's a fundamental need for all humans to feel strong and autonomous. We want to feel capable. So if you're helping someone and in a moment of weakness, you become a witness to that weakness, some people cannot stand someone else to witness their vulnerability. It destroys everything that they're working to protect, and the ego is in full control. So what do? Well, they reject you. They're going to reject the source of discomfort. And this all happens so fast often. All of a sudden, you're wondering why they're giving you the cold shoulder, why they're making you feel bad, or why they're alienating you or rejecting you or triangulating you. They're just flat out rejecting you, and you don't understand because all you did was care. Well, this is when gratitude will turn into resentment, because in the beginning, they might be very thankful. And here's another thing, and this is a subtle nuance that once I learned this, it changed how I related to people. We have to look at where our source of worth is really derived from, because so many of us have been conditioned to look for our worth outside of ourselves. And in my practice, in my one-on-one embodiment mentor sessions, and in my self-love workshops and retreats that I lead, we go through a process to really help you identify where your worth comes from. For the longest time, I defined unknowingly, it's not like you say it out loud, but I was defining my worth by how much I could give. Save someone, fix someone, help someone. You call, I say how high and jump, and I never even included my own needs in that. Well, paradoxically, we're going to use that word. That's our key word today. We've already said it a few times. It's interesting because my need to be needed and help others was often a puzzle piece to the people who were constantly taking, because they needed to feel like they needed someone. So they were always in a place of being the needy one. They defined themselves unconsciously and their worth through, I need people to help me. That shows me I'm valuable. For me, I need to help people. That shows me I'm valuable. Well, this is all an ego mechanism, and it's part of humans and us growing and our personal growth and working through those childhood wounds. Because when you start to see that I am acting from a trauma response, from a function of my childhood that when I couldn't defend myself, I couldn't stand up for myself, I created this kind of protection of, oh, in order for me to fit into this place, I'm going to give, take care of, save, or fix. That's my worth. That's how I find value. Or I need people to take care of me. That is how I find value. And so this is why often narcissists and empaths often go together like moths to a flame, because they're both fulfilling a need in an unmet childhood wound that hasn't really been fully looked at or healed. So when someone is rejecting you and that resentment turns in, that gratitude kind of shifts, there's like a moment, it turns into resentment, everything changes. Because on a psychological level, there's a mechanism that kicks in underneath. It's basically this mindset that is operating at a fundamental level. The more help, the heavier the emotional debt becomes. It's a feeling. It's not something that's ever spoken. So this means the person who's giving will build up more of an emotional resentment because they're giving. And the taker is building up an even bigger emotional debt because they're like, I have to depend on this person and I am starting to resent them, and they push them away. And that's why, of course, it never feels fair. So you're going to feel embarrassed. They feel guilty. And most importantly, if they're operating from their ego, they're going to feel inferior. And that is something they can just not stand. So that's where the resentment comes from. So they're going to look for someone to blame, and the easiest one is you. You're right there, giving to them, loving them, caring for them with no agenda. So when this happens, it's really a power imbalance, and it happens in every relationship, but all relationships have invisible balances. However, if somebody is fully in their ego or operating from a place of wounds, not looking at the conditioning that has made their behavior so automatic, it's going to feel more intense. And this is often why when you give, it's that exact people, those people who betray you. Nobody likes to feel inferior, but some people would rather destroy the relationship than actually accept a subordinate position. And this is directly from the video, that I was sharing from ancient philosophy. It's so important to understand when you give and receive, how are you feeling? And you want to make sure that you're not overgiving past capacity, because when this happens, everything falls apart in the relationship. You would start to understand the balance can be balanced out when we start to understand the psychology of the way we behave. So instead of rising above it and saying thank you, or, just accepting that maybe I'm in a season where I need help, some people are going to prefer to actually cut down others. They put them down. They criticize. They go behind their backs and try to, smear their names or defame them. Whatever it may be, it is an attack. But really, they're fighting with themselves. Instead of thanking them, they're going to belittle. They're not going to admire the person. They're going to criticize them. Nietzsche actually wrote that the weak man transforms his powerless into morality. So if somebody's operating in full ego, they will go around and say, I'm right. I am in the moral high ground, without looking at themselves. And that's where accountability comes in. So Nietzsche actually calls this the resentment. And that's what resentment is. So here's the thing I want you to take away with you today, and stick around. We got the steps that you can really build and set your relationships up for a powerful foundation. Here's the thing. You are not the problem. If someone betrays you, and if it happens over and over from different people, it's great that you have a big heart. It's beautiful that you love. But if they betray you after you helped them, it doesn't actually mean that you did anything wrong. You loved, you gave, you were generous, you supported, and you didn't have an agenda. It just simply means that that human is operating from their ego, and their ego is so fragile. And their independence is vital, but they hate that they're leaning on others or feeling codependent. And emotional debt is too heavy for them to even consciously try to wrap their arms around. So recognize this. Most betrayals don't stem from malice. They stem from an inner discomfort. I used to think once these betrayals were happening so regularly that people were actually out to get me. I went through a period where I thought these are malicious people who are actually wanting to be villains. And then I said, well, maybe I need to research this a little more because I'm the one who's constantly being betrayed. What in me is allowing that? And that leads us to the most important lessons of how are you operating in your relationships? Because I'll say it again, most betrayals don't actually stem from malice. They're actually from an inner discomfort or a person who is avoiding themselves. So here are the lessons that we can apply that can really help us. They're just practical principles to apply to your life. Once I started to implement these, I kid you not, I'm not making any grand gesture here. It is the truth. My relationships changed for the better. They transformed. I felt better, and I no longer have resentment in any relationship because I'm not overgiving, and I'm not in same thing as I'm communicating and sharing and knowing where my boundaries are. So that is exactly it. If you want to recognize places of imbalance in your relationships, start by looking at how you're showing up. Are you taking and building resentment towards someone else? Are you feeling upset? Maybe you're operating from ego and you're afraid to be accountable or look at yourself, and maybe it's okay to be needed. It's okay to also need others. But if we're dividing and deriving our worth from that, we want to look at that because you are not worthy because you give or because you receive. You are worthy because you're here. Your worth is because you're amazing, just as you are. It has nothing to do with what you do. So here are the principles. Number 1, never help someone just to be liked. Oh, people pleasers. Oh, can we hear that one? I didn't realize that I was giving and pleasing. I didn't even know people pleasers was a thing, but I was the queen of people pleasing because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. That's what a good person does. But it was actually a response to me feeling misunderstood, chronically invalidated, and neglected emotionally as a child. So when you please others, it was a form subtly of please like me. So number 1, I just stopped doing that. I said, you know what? I got to like myself first, and I don't care if people don't like me if I have to say no. So number 1, never help just to be liked. Number 2, and again, these are inspired from the Ancients Philosophy YouTube channel. So number 2, think about where you are in your own life. Never expect external gratitude. And this one's tricky because when I give, and I think you can relate if you're a pleaser and an empath and a highly sensitive person or neurodivergent, you give because you actually want to. It doesn't feel like you're going out of your way when you consciously want to give. However, if you don't hear a thank you, sometimes it hits like, well, at least they could say thank you. Then that means you might be operating from a place of still wanting that external gratitude. And so this leads us to just check in with yourself. Give without expecting anything in return, especially a gratitude. Because when you do get it, it's wonderful, but not everyone has the capacity or the whereabouts to think outside of themselves. A lot of the overgivers and people pleasers and us, empaths, we orientate ourselves to the people around us because it helps us feel safer. We will read the room faster than anyone else, and we will emotionally attune and try to regulate others. What we're working at here and looking at is, especially in She Saves Herself and in this collective community, we can have healthier relationships when we start to recognize what is our energy and what is others. You can still be emotionally attuned, highly empathetic, and supportive without taking on other people's energy. And if you're somebody who is constantly in survival mode or operating from wounds, or you're living so fully in your ego, you are often orientated towards self. This is my needs. This is what I have to do. This is how I'm going to take care of this exact moment. And you start to look at the imbalances in relationships. I have a lot of friends who would come to me for help. I used to, just coach, not realizing, but I would love, giving them advice because it was natural. But then I stopped. I remember moving to a new location and I was getting to know a new friend, and they said, well, what's your advice? And I said, I stopped giving advice. I would like to just listen and be here for you. And that changed everything. We're such close friends now. And it's really special when you can show up differently in your relationships, because I started to look at which relationships are more about a reciprocation versus someone showing up about me and my needs, and I need you to be the fixer caretaker, because a lot of us will overfunction and serve that need, and then we become burnt out, and then we become resentful. So again, number one is to never help just to be liked. And number two is never expect gratitude or don't have expectations around you giving. And number three is don't keep score. Don't think that you're doing something so you can get something back. You don't have to remind the other person of what you've done. That's just not a true natural reciprocation. So the next one, fourth, is only help if you're actually prepared to receive absolutely nothing in return. Nothing. Zitch. Nada. Help then. Because you're no longer attached to any outcome you're giving because it feels like you have the capacity to give. You're helping because you actually can. And the fifth one is to not give past the point of unbalancing the relationship. If you've noticed that, for example, I have a friend who I'm wanting to build the relationship and really grow this friendship. It seems like we have a lot in common, but every time we talk, it's always something they need. And I end up being the person they go to. I started to recognize that there was no real genuine care or concern or ask or how are you doing? They'd say thank you and stuff. And I was happy to help when I could, but I started to pull back and I noticed real clear the imbalance of the relationship because they were someone who orientated towards themselves only. And I orientated towards, let me read the room, let me energetically calm any stress. And I stopped doing that in this relationship. And I started to see very early on, within the first couple of weeks of knowing this person, whereas before I would have looked right past that red flag. I would have, and it's not a red flag, we're not saying one person's bad, the other. What we're just saying is these are dynamics for healthy relationships to function further. We were orientated and operated from different place. So that's what I mean by talking about the balance of a relationship. You want to feel balanced. And this is what emotional maturity is and self-awareness. It's going to consist of you giving freely and accepting that not everyone is going to be able to carry what you have to offer. But you can recognize earlier, so resentment doesn't build up, how to protect yourself. And the strongest people will be able to appreciate help. And here's the thing, weak people or insecure people or people who are still operating in such their wounds or ego defense mechanisms will experience it as a threat. So you want to look at your relationships. Here's the task, and here's what I'll leave you with today. Look at your relationships and look at who feels reciprocal. Who slightly feels threatened when you help them? Is there a quiet resentment? Is there a little comment? Is there a silent treatment or a little kind of jab that happens? These are people who might not be safe for you and your nervous system. They might actually be operating from a hidden area within them where their ego is in control and they're resenting the help. So what do? Well, you pull back the help, not in a malicious way or a take that. It's a sovereign self-love way. You start to look at what can I do and what feels like overextending. You put up clear boundaries for yourself first of I will not allow this in my life, or types of people who take and never give. You create these standards for yourself, which we do in my coaching and in my mentorships, and you just write them down for yourself. So I hope this helped. You don't have to take on the betrayal. You don't have to feel like something's wrong with you. It really comes down to where people are operating from. Are they operating from an ego heart or ego head or their heart? I hope this resonates. I want to leave you with one final thought, that you are so worth it and you do belong. Leave a comment, share, and like and subscribe if this resonated. And to let you know, it is summer 2026 right now when we're recording. I know these are evergreen, but we are open now. The one-on-one mentorships for self-love and self-worth are open right now. So go ahead and go to Radical Body Love with Shannon and learn more about how we can work together. It's great being here with you. Have a great rest of your day, showing up for yourself and making sure you don't abandon you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to She Saves Herself podcast. If this episode moved you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs it.
If you have a question for the show, visit shesavesherself.org and send it in through the contact page. I'd love to hear from you. And while you're there, you can go to donate and you can help the cause and help support emotional abuse survivors on their healing journey. Until next time, keep going and growing. And remember, you are your own rescue and you are so worth it.